who are the gentlemen clergy. We have the second estate, who are the nobility. And then we have the third estate, who are made up of two sub-estates, the bourgeoisie, who basically make all the decisions for the estate. They're the middle class. And we also have the peasants. All right, so each estate does get one vote. So look how unevenly that's divided. Now, 97% of the population only get 1/3 of the voting rights. That's how the whole thing is set up. Now, what keeps the whole thing in place is going to be something called number one here, a system of deference. Okay, deference means you give in or you defer to your social betters. So everything in the society is based on the idea that you acknowledge which class you are and the way that you treat someone or expect to be treated in the society based entirely on your particular social class. Sometimes that would reach ludicrous extents. So let's say the second estate, the aristocracy, they want to go fox hunting. So they're going after all this, over all these peasants' lands, chasing the poor little fox who never even did anything. And let's say they trample over your land. Remember, they're so poor, the peasants, they don't even pay any taxes. So you know they're very poor. But if somebody is going fox hunting and they trample over your land, you were expected to smile and say, well, you look tired, could I bring you a drink? Do you think that's what they really felt? That their whole year's work basically destroyed because some loafer is, going over their land? No, but you can't acknowledge what you really feel. There's deference everybody has to some extent, put up with. Let's say, okay, your boss. Okay, when you use that term boss as an adjective, bossy, is that usually meant as a compliment or not? No. People rarely like their bosses because they have the ability to fire you, tell you what to do, have control over you. But are you allowed to tell the boss exactly what you think of them? Now, if you want to hold on to your job, or let's say, the old saying, the customer is always right. They're not right. They're probably wrong like 97% of the time. They are never at the store. They don't know any of the background, reasons why things aren't the way they want it to be. They're always trying to play games and give outdated coupons and still accept them. Can you, tell them what you really think of them and how right they really are? No, because you're deferring to people that are considered, your social better at the moment. Okay, so this whole system is set up that way. Now, the most angry of these three estates about this completely unjust system is the bourgeoisie. They're more angry than the peasantry, even though they have better lives. The bourgeoisie aren't necessarily particularly poor, but they are angry because they feel they're being taken advantage of. The bourgeoisie is, in fact, paying the entire tax burden for the entire country. The peasants aren't paying it because they're too poor to pay. It. And the first and second estate aren't paying it because people of their class are not expected to pay it. It's seen as something good for the society that they even have members of those two estates. So the 10% paying the entire tax burden for everyone. So they're angry about it, but they can't do anything about it except write poison pen letters in the newspaper, which only members of their estate actually read. All right, so the other states, everything's just going on as it normally did until 1886, 3 years before the French Revolution. In 1886, there's going to be a really bad situation for the king. Now, the king is basically very oblivious to anything going on in the country. He doesn't care about it. He just does what he wants to do. All right, but things get so bad in 1886 that no one will lend him any more money. He's constantly been spending more and more money, not worried at all about where it's come from. But he's gotten away with it because he's the king. And he felt, I can always borrow more money. What's the difference? Well, in 1886, things get so bad that no one will lend the French government any more money. Now, think what that really means. Today, there's different rates that you're going to pay to borrow money. If you're a really good credit risk, you make a good income, you've had years of paying back substantial debts, and they know, you basically have a good history of paying it. You have a lot of property that they could attach if they really wanted to. They're going to lend you a lot of money for a pretty low price because they feel, you're a good risk. Now, your average person, they'll lend the money, but they'll charge them more interest, but they'll still lend it. But they'll limit how much they'll lend. And someone that's a little more risky, they'll lend the money, but you're going to pay much more steeper interest rates, and maybe the amounts to lend you will be lower. But then you get the people that go to the payday loan places or rent a center. So, they can never save up the money to buy a TV, so they're always having to rent it from Rent-A-Center for $10 a week because they have the $10 a week, but they cannot seem to somehow save $200 to buy a TV. But to get that, you're, paying a lot of interest. Okay, but then even the people that the payday loan people won't touch. That's the situation that the king is in. No one will lend him any money. And when they told him that, he said, well, offer a higher interest rate. They'll grab it, the banks. They said, we've tried. No one will lend you any more money. Okay, now if God forbid that happened in your own situation, what would be the rational way to handle that? Would you continue spending the same exact way that you have? Or you would try to cut back, right? So you'd spend less on eating out, you'd take shorter vacations, if any, you would try to sell what you don't really need, maybe you get a second job to try to raise more money. These are rational ways to handle a bad situation. That's not what the king did. All right, so what he does is in 1886, there's going to be what's called the, number 2 here, the calling of the Estates General. Now, what the calling of the Estates General means is he calls members of each of the 3 estates, and he wants to know their opinion about what he should do. Okay, so the first one he goes to is going to be the first estate, the clerk, the gentleman clergy. And he brought in members of that, and he said, look, no one will lend me any money. What am I supposed to do? And they said, oh, don't worry about it, sire. Just raise taxes. That'll immediately get you more money. Then he calls in the second estate. The second estate is the nobility, the ones throwing those very lavish parties that we talked about, always involved in the conspicuous consumption, showing off how much they have. So he asks them, he says the same thing. What am I going to do? Look how bad things are. No one will lend the Royal Bank any more money. And they said, no, don't worry about it. Just raise taxes. He then calls in the third estate. He wants to hear their opinion. Now, the third estate, the only part that actually has anything to say about it is going to be the bourgeoisie. Remember, the rest of them, they're just farming all the time. They don't know anything other than what's not part of the cow, it's beyond that. So they ask them. So the bourgeoisie comes in, and do you think they're going to say the same thing? All right, why not? Right, they're paying. So here's what they say. They say, sell some of your wife's jewelry, sell some of the properties that you don't use. Live a little less extravagantly, travel less, throw simpler parties. Well, guess what? Outvoted 2-1. Because the other two say just raise taxes. So the king just raises the taxes. The bourgeoisie's angry about it, but why can't they do anything about it? System of deference. They have to defer to their social betters. Does that mean their anger goes away, or does it become sublimated? It's going to be beneath the surface. It's not going to come out, but it's still going to be there. You just can't act on it. Okay, so that's the situation that is set up. So people are going to care about things that affect them, right? You heard they're going to raise the income, or not income tax, but regular tax here in the Doylestown area is 3%. So like in Philadelphia, what they did with the hard liquor or the soda, probably care, right? Do you care if they raise it 10% in San Francisco? No, because you don't live there. You know, the little time you spend there, so for 3 days, you pay the higher tax. Who cares? People care what affects them. So they're raising so the king raises the income by raising the taxes. So the bourgeoisie stop paying more. They're angry. They're writing these letters about how unfair it is. They're writing it to their friends in other countries, publishing it in the newspaper. None of it means anything. It doesn't matter. It's like, you know, if you complain about the food at the school, or you complain about you don't like some of the dorm conditions. Does it really matter? They don't care. The only way they care is if you stopped giving them the tuition, right? So they ignore it. All right, but now the king learned from this. You know, he slipped by the skin of his teeth. He didn't learn at all. If anything, he starts spending more money to show that he can do whatever he wants. He's the king, and he wants to always show he has more than the aristocrats. So he's out living them. You know, they're living these parties where they wear one gown for half the evening. It's made of inlaid pearls and takes 4 months to make. Costs tens of thousands of dollars. People wear it for half the evening and throw it away. They do the same thing with 100 different dishes. Well, so he wants to live even more extravagantly. Okay, so things keep going until the fall of 1788, leading into the winter of 1789. What's going to happen is there's going to be the worst harvest in 100 years. All right. So now, who's the bad harvest going to really affect? Is it going to affect the king? Is he going to start eating less? 100% no. Is it going to affect the first estate, the gentleman clergy? No, they're going to still live the same way. They'll just grab more money from the collection plate. Is it going to affect the nobility with their parties? No, they'll just pay more for it. The bourgeoisie also can afford to pay for it. They may cut back a little, but they're still can afford to eat. So who are the ones that it's really going to affect? The peasants. They can't afford to buy the food now. So look at that situation. They're growing the food, but they can't afford to eat the food. Yeah?
If they don't pay taxes, then could they just keep the food they're growing?
Yeah, but they still have to pay for their land. They still have to pay for the workers. They still have to pay for items for the animals to eat. They still have to buy clothes. So all their money is going into their expenses. That's a good question. Okay, so they don't know what to do. There's almost nothing for them to eat. Now, most people, if there's nothing for you to eat, are you going to just sort of stand there with your mouth open like a baby bird waiting for manna from the heavens to fall into it? No, even if you're an honest, honorable person, you're desperate enough, what are you going to start doing? You're going to start moving to other areas and trying to find food. Now, most of the peasants have never been more than about 5 miles from the place that they were born. They're very insular. But so now they start wandering the countryside looking for food. And what are they going to find? The nobility having these lavish parties, dumping this, dumping that, throwing this out. Do you think they're going to just say, oh, well, these people are richer than us. That's okay for them to look like that. No, they're going to be furious. So what they do is they start burning down the chateau of the nobles. They rape the noble wives and daughters, and they steal everything that's not nailed down. And then things only get worse when they go into the royal wine cellars. Now, I'm sure nobody here would have any such idea, but I've heard people can sometimes act irrationally when they drink. It must be one of those urban legends. Well, think of a happy hour any place when you're trying to cram in 6 or 7 drinks in the 2 hours because you don't want to pay 25 cents more when it's outside of happy hour. All right, so at the beginning of it, someone does something a little annoying. They bump into you and they don't say, excuse me. They look at your girlfriend a little too intensely. You're not going to like these things, but, what if they do the same thing 2 hours later after you've had several? That's when you get the bar fights. So that's what we have now going on all over the place. So these people are out of control, and they're people who have nothing to lose. There's no one more dangerous than someone who has nothing to lose. So, for example, what would be scarier here at the gates of the university? 50 lawyers with their fountain pens, or 50 homeless people that they gave a one-way ticket from Center City. That wasn't actually a way they were trying to handle the homeless problem for a while. They just gave all the homeless people like one-way tickets on the set them. Then they started shipping them back, so it didn't last. It was kind of an interesting way of handling it. The city of Philadelphia has come up with all these different ways of handling their problems. They've always been angry that people in the suburbs have more money, and they're saying, why can't they use some of that money to pay for our homeless? So, which would be more scary? The homeless people, because there's not much to lose. The lawyers, wait a minute, if they do something too far, they could end up in jail, they could lose their home, they could lose their good job. These people have nothing to lose. And that's the way the peasants are. So a bunch of angry, drunk, disgruntled peasants. And these people are going to be wandering throughout the countryside throughout the whole winter of 1789 and the spring of 1789. And then eventually on July 14th, 1789, there's going to be the number 3 here, the storming of the Bastille. Now, the Bastille is where the king's arms are kept. It's where the prisoners are as well. So once you have the guns, you control basically the country. So now we have the peasants with all the weapons. They've taken over, they've released all the prisoners, the king's out of there. All right, but now, are these people going to know how to start a new country? Who would be the ones who would know? Yeah.
Bourgeoisie.
The bourgeoisie, right. So now the bourgeoisie the peasants are going to turn over the government to the bourgeoisie. And the bourgeoisie, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to make a declaration saying why they have the right to break away from the domination of the king, why this is a legitimate act where it's not just treason or sour grapes or stealing from the king. Because they legitimately feel they have the right. Okay, so this document that they write, the bourgeoisie, is going to be called the number 6 here, the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen. And the Declaration of the Rights of Man and Citizen starts off with this phrase. And see if it seems familiar to you. All men are born free and equal in rights. So all men are born free and equal in rights. Well, where does that sound like it might come from? Right, they take it right from the Declaration of Independence. Well, you know, the famous saying, imitation is the most sincere form of flattery. So it shows, you know, these are very educated people. They're constantly looking at America and England and saying, why can't France be more like England and America? Because those places are more egalitarian. People have more rights as individuals. So they're going to try to base it a lot on America. Now they're also going to start some slogans of the French Revolution. And here's their most famous slogan, number 5 here. Liberté in French, liberté, égalité, fraternité in English. Liberty, equality, and fraternity. Liberty, the idea that all men are born free and equal. All men are born free. Equality, all men are born equal, so they're equal to one another, not these class distinctions we're talking about. And fraternity, the idea that you see your fellow citizen as your brother. And, you know, just like, okay, let's say around the Thanksgiving table, you have one son who's a doctor, another one who's a trash collector. Is the mother going to say, wait a minute, here's my son the success and here's my son the loser? No, you know, family's not going to do that. Will the society do it? Yes. But, you know, in the family, no, you just see them as, you know, your fellow sibling. So this kind of shows the equality between these different groups. So the first thing that the National Assembly is going to do, they're going to get rid of that whole system of deference. They always despised it because they felt, why should these other people who don't do anything, you know, the lazy clergy who are just basically doing very little and have all this power and prestige and are seen as closest to God, why do they get so much respect? And then why do these loafers who do nothing but drink all day long and spend money, why are they respected while the people who are doing all the work are ignored? So they want to get rid of this system of deference. So they make this distinction now, as the bourgeoisie are going to say everybody's equal now. They're saying that in this here, right with equality. So they're saying everyone now is equal. And here's what they're going to say. They say, we are all now, we're all citizens of France, not subjects of the king. Why is that such an important difference? What's the difference between being a citizen of a nation rather than a subject? Yeah.
A citizen is much more active, where a subject is kind of like your own.
Yeah, right, perfect. A citizen, you're part of it. You know, we're all citizens of the United States, so the country belongs equally to all of us, no matter if we're poor or rich or, you know, involved or uninvolved. But subject means we're subject to the will of the leaders. So they're saying we're not anymore. We're free from the domination of the king. There is no king anymore. All right, so this is the new France that is now set up. All right, now the group in charge that took over, who was saying all this stuff, the bourgeoisie, they're going to be a group now. They're going to start calling themselves the National Assembly. So they become the National Assembly, and as a group, they run the country. Oh, we have them already, I'm sorry. Yeah, so they become the National Assembly. All right, so the National Assembly, they're going to have to deal with some of the problems that France has. Let's see what they deal with. Okay, the famine. Okay, we have all these hungry people. The famine writes itself. That was one terrible year. The next harvest is a more normal harvest. So that problem's taken care of. What other problems do they have to deal with?
Didn't there end up being 2 more French revolutions after the first one?
No.
I thought there were like many parts to it, I should say.
Well, this is a major part. The other parts are like, I wouldn't even call it a sub-revolution.
Okay, but I think you know what I mean. But
yeah. No, but so what are they going to have to deal with? Okay, the taxes. This country owes a lot of money. You know, as we see in our own country. When the country owes a lot of money, what happens? They're limited what they can do. You know, we have, you know, here in this country, lots and lots of great ideas. How to make things more fair, how to, you know, create equity, and how to save the environment, how, you know, whatever the cause of the moment is. Okay, but why are most of those things never going to be solved? Who's going to pay for them? If we owe tons and tons of debt, it would be like, okay, I'm just making up a scenario. Let's say, okay, you graduate Del Valle and, you know, you go to graduate school or vet school or, you know, professional school, and then at the end of it end up owing to $300,000. Okay, now if lots of people are owing all this money and no one's getting other, you know, any jobs other than, you know, semi-minimum wage jobs, are they likely to be able to pay that back? Now, so if the country owes a lot of money, it's not going to be able to focus on all these other things. So that's what we have here. They owe all this money. But they're going to get rid of this debt virtually overnight. Here's how they're going to do it. The first thing they're going to do is they are going to basically take the lands of the clergy and sell them. Because they said, who needs the clergy? The first estate, they're basically parasites. They have all this fine land, they're not doing anything really useful, they have never paid any taxes. So they defrock all the priests, take their land, and sell it as a way to pay off the debt. And the clergy traditionally has had some very nice land holdings. They still do. But then, who are they going to get to buy it? Okay. Can they sell it resell it to the clergy? Is the Pope going to spend more money to get back the land that he used to have because they confiscated it? No. What about the nobility? Is that going to be the time when they want to show how much money they have? No. Any money they have, they're going to hide it or take it with them into other countries. So who's left? The peasants? No. So the bourgeoisie. So look what situation we have. The bourgeoisie, who is now the National Assembly, is going to be selling land to pay off the debt to their friends. Well, do you think they're going to give their friends a good deal on this land? Sure. You know, it's like if you owe the bank a lot of money on your house and you could get away with selling it to your brother for $1, you're going to sell it to your brother. So that's what they do. They sell it to their friends, they raise the money, and they pay off all that debt the country owes. So now the country is basically free and clear. All right, so whose lives are getting better? Well, the bourgeoisie are now getting all this land at a good price, so they're pretty happy, right? The only one who's really hurt are the peasants. The peasants are still poor. So the peasants actually are very understanding. They wait about 2 years. In about the year 1791, they go to the council halls and go up to the National Assembly and ask the National Assembly very humbly, well, you know, you've made things better for people of your class, but you know, we're still struggling. We don't have much. We have almost nothing. When are you going to make things better for us? The answer they get from the National Assembly, they get thrown out of the council halls. They put some gendarme in front of it, the guards, and now they're basically thrown out. This is the wrong thing to do. Now they're going to get angry. Well, what's the one advantage that poor people always have over rich people? Numbers, right. The majority of people are poor. So now in this semi-democratic society, they're going to start developing their own political parties. So in 1791, there's going to be the start of a group called the number 7 year, the Jacobins. Okay, the Jacobins are politically, so 1791, the Jacobins. The Jacobins are essentially a leftist group. And why would that make perfect sense? Well, let me ask this. What do we mean by right and left? We hear about that a lot in politics. What do those terms really mean? Which party do we associate today with the right and which one with the left?
Democrats and Republicans.
Right, which is which?
Oh, I don't know directions.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
Democrats are left, Republicans are
right. Democrats are left, Republicans are right. So what's as far left as you can go? What were they often calling Bernie Sanders?
Socialist.
Socialist. Well, what's even left of that?
Communism.
Right, good. So a socialist, the government own the major industries, they control that. In a communist society, nothing's individually owned, the state owns everything. Good. All right, so the left is going to be towards communism, the right is conservatism. And it makes sense because, you know, if things are going well for you, do you really want to change things or do you want to maintain the status quo? If things are going well, you want to keep things the way they are. If things are not going well, you want to change things. So are things going well for the majority of people in this society? No. So they're going to be behind the leftist groups. So there's various leftist groups. There's one called the Montagnards, the Mountain Men. This one is not quite as far left as that, but these are still pretty far left. So the ones that come to power are really going to be the Jacobins, number 7 here. And they have the numbers, so they basically gain control of the society away from the National Assembly. Now, some things we associate with the Jacobins. One thing they're going to be known for is they actually start their own calendar. Can't get too much more radical than that. So they're going to get rid of the Roman calendar that France has used for the prior almost 1,800 years. Because they said, who cares about what some dead emperors in ancient Rome had to say? What have they done for the people of France? So who needs the month of July, named after Julius Caesar? Who needs the month of August, named after Augustus Caesar? Neither of the Caesars have done anything for the people of France. So they put all time based on the French Revolution. So in the Jacobin calendar, the year 0 is the it starts with not Christ. They're going to say, what has Christ done for the people of France? Nothing. Remember, they don't like religion. They just got rid of all the religious officials. So they're going to instead center everything around the French Revolution. The French Revolution becomes the be-all and end-all of everything in the society. So the year 1789 becomes the year 0. The year 1790 now becomes the year 1. They're going to name months after things that mean more to the people of France, and particularly the peasants. So it could be something like, hey, this is the month of pumpkin, because this is when pumpkins are grown. Or this is the month of corn. They're going to name them after important revolutionary figures. Because they're going to say these are the ones that have done things for the people of France, not some dead Roman emperors from 2,000 years ago, or some religious deity that has not shown his presence in 2 millennia. So they make up their own calendar. Now, one of the things that we think of most with the Jacobin period is going to be an event called the number 10 here, the Reign of Terror. Now, the Reign of Terror takes place in the year 1793 and continues into the 1794. So 1793 into 1794. It takes place for 9 months. Now, the Reign of Terror we associate with the figure number 9 here, Maximillion de Robespierre. And Maximillion de Robespierre, known as the head judge on the Committee of Public Safety. Now notice we have public safety officers here. Are they particularly well liked usually? No, they're often resented because they're going to be the ones confiscating contraband in your rooms. They're going to be the ones giving you fines for parking where they don't want you to park, and they're making the rules to keep the society safe. In this case, the campus. Well, they have their own committee of public safety here in this period. Okay, now, interesting thing about Max de Robespierre. First of all, he comes from a peasant background. And how common would it be for a peasant to become, someone from a peasant background to become not only a lawyer but a judge? Do we even today, do we have a lot of judges coming from working class backgrounds? No. But in many ways that benefits him because people trust him more because he's from their own particular social class. So he's one of them who did well. He understands them, he knows the problems that they've experienced. It'd be almost like Philadelphia today. Philadelphia today, much different kinds of mayors than the kind of mayors that we traditionally saw in Philadelphia 60, 70 years ago. 60, 70 years ago, the mayors of Philadelphia were coming often from upper class backgrounds. They lived in Chestnut Hill. They sent their children to Penn Charter, an expensive private school, and then they went to Yale. They just very old money. How much chance would someone from that background have of being mayor of Philadelphia today? Very little, because no one feels they represent the kind of people that live in Philadelphia. People want people that they can identify with, who understand their plight and the problems they're going through, not someone too removed from it. All right, so the Robespierre has this background that is much like his the people, so he cares about working class people. He's one of them who did well. Now, what he's going to be famous for is what's called number 10 here, the Reign of Terror. The Reign of Terror takes place over about 9 months between 1793 and 1794. So in those 9 months, what is going to happen is the whole society is going to change. First of all, he's going to start arresting people for being against the French Revolution. You're going to find over 40,000 people are going to be arrested and accused of being against the French Revolution. That's seen as the most serious crime, being against the French Revolution. It's seen as an act of treason. So he starts arresting people in the middle of the night for supposedly being against the revolution. Now, the majority of people were politically neutral. They weren't talking about the revolution, for the revolution. It's like, the people of today, most people are not that interested in politics. They just want to go about their regular, everyday lives. Okay, but what if you saw your neighbor, Jean-Pierre, who you knew was just a farmer and never talked about politics at all? What if you saw that he got arrested in the middle of the night for supposedly being against the revolution? Are you going to be that worried about poor Jean-Pierre? Or are you going to be worried about, wait a minute, if they can arrest him for doing nothing, they could arrest you for doing nothing? See, the system of jurisprudence, the complete opposite from the system we have here. In our society, you're presumed to be innocent until someone proves that you're guilty. In their society, the burden of proof is to prove that you're innocent. So what if you can't prove that you're innocent? So they're arresting all these people supposedly of being against the revolution. And then they even start executing some of them. They actually start using a new, they're killing so many people supposedly of being against the revolution that they actually start using a new device, the guillotine. Okay, the guillotine is a sharpened blade. You would basically bend someone over, you would manacle their hands, so, and then off with the head, a real sharpened blade. And since the French are always very tidy people, they have a bucket to catch the blood and gore, and then they put it in a cream sauce, and it's delicious. No. But they do have the all the heads coming off. So, that's where the saying "off with the head." So that they changed the method of execution because there's so many people who are now seen as enemies of the government. Before, it was usually public hanging. People would go to their church service and hear all that good stuff that Jesus did, and then want to apply it to their own life. So they have a nice picnic lunch there, and often have it down there by the gallows, and then kind of bet with their friends when the political prisoner's head would snap. But public hangings, although interesting as they may be, don't work when you have all these political prisoners. So what they do is then they have to start using the guillotine. Okay, now people became really scared because they saw all their friends being arrested. They didn't even know for what. So they become constantly having to prove how patriotic they are. This becomes like a duty. So people start singing patriotic songs all the time. So, if you look like you're really patriotic, maybe they'll leave you alone. And another thing they do is they start planning what are called liberty trees. All right, liberty trees are regular trees that you would plant, and then you put a Jacobin ribbon around it, so red, white, and blue, showing that you believed in the French Revolution. Well, what if you wanted to look more patriotic than the next person? More trees, or bigger trees. It's like just after 9/11, what was the only thing anybody was buying? Yellow ribbons. And then they would put the yellow ribbons on everything, and they, it did wonders for our economy. They were all made in China. All right, but so, let's say you wanted to put one on the front of your car and the back of your car, so that if, God forbid, you accidentally ran over somebody, at least they would know you were a true patriot before they died. So that's what the people were doing, constantly trying to prove how patriotic they were. Singing patriotic songs, going to political demonstrations, talking about how great the French Revolution was. Even the artwork changed during the Jacobin period. For example, a common theme in artwork was the Virgin Mary holding the baby Jesus in her arms. Well, she became known as something else during the Jacobin period. They started calling her Marianne, the goddess of liberty, and instead of holding the Christ child in her arms, she starts holding a Jacobin flag. So people constantly trying to prove all the time how religious they were. But after a certain point, it became a big burden. It would be like, okay, we enjoy the 4th of July, right? It's a nice holiday. It's a nice time of year. You watch the fireworks. You eating mom's homemade apple pie with hand-cranked vanilla ice cream. Listen to the Beach Boys. Okay, enough patriotic imagery there. But what if they had this every Friday? Would you still enjoy it, or would it get really annoying all the time? It would become a big burden. You're constantly having to prove to everybody how patriotic you were. So eventually the whole thing kind of fell apart, and they're going to accuse Robespierre and his assistant, a man by the name of Saint Just, of being against the revolution. And what happens is he actually became, and then the whole thing basically just fell apart. And then the society is going to go in a completely different direction. All right, so does anyone have any questions about any of this? Okay, we'll let it go with that then, and hope everyone has a nice Labor Day. Next time we're going to start talking about a period called the Directory, and then leading into Napoleon.